welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Orrick, with my partner, Bob Rose. Tonight, Sean is otherwise occupied because I believe he's at a wedding tonight, believe it or not. But this is my home away from home right now. I am in Cecilia, Louisiana, and I'm racking my brains trying to think, who do I know from Cecilia? And I know I can hear my friends from UL screaming at me, me, you idiot, don't you remember? But it's fun. I got cane fields on the side of me over here, and I got cane fields in the back. A friend of mine texted me. He says, yeah, it's going to be the children of the sugarcane field. And I said, oh, they're all going to be from New Iberia, have the New Iberia haircut. They're all boss. So anyway, welcome. It's now the official week 1 preview. Football starts Thursday night. We've got the Bucks and the Cowboys, maybe a meteor or strike that night. And then the Saints play Sunday at 3:25. Bob, I have not been keeping up with this. Do you know that there's a tropical system that is going to be in the Gulf and maybe heading to Jacksonville, Florida for this weekend? Have you heard this?
Yes, I have. Yeah, because I'm a hurricane watcher, as a lot of y'all that follow me know. This system, if it develops into a tropical storm, it will be named Mindy. Its early projected path is to kind of skim the Gulf. You folks in Louisiana there, so you have to deal with that again, and then to potentially hit the Gulf Coast of Florida with a direct hit. Right now they're not projecting how strong it could be. Everybody's focused on the Atlantic storm Larry, that's going to hit the North Atlantic or maybe even the Canadian Atlantic shore. But yeah, sure enough, if the storm that would be named Mindy picks up a little bit of speed, it could very much affect the game in Jacksonville between the Saints and Packers on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, I was just looking at the forecast for it. It's just a low right now. And keep in mind, Ida churned up a lot of that water. So you're not it's not that hot water that we experienced, that Ida grew so easily with. And there's some also wind shear that Ida did not get. So There's a lot of things working against this thing developing into a major system, but it could still be a tropical system. I'm just looking at it right now. It just says upper level winds are not favorable for fast development of the system, and it could enhance rainfall on the U.S. Gulf Coast and parts of the Southeast. So It could be a rainy day in Jacksonville in an open air stadium, something the Saints usually don't have to deal with.
Right. But see that, folks, Alan and I aren't just your football gurus. We're budding meteorologists and prognosticators for the future.
I got a blue tarp on my roof, so I'm always watching for the weather now. I've got the Weather Channel app too. I do have that.
Don't steering people away from us. We want to be the go-to meteorologist for the Saints Nation too.
I also downloaded the local news on my phone, so I've been watching the local news a lot. But their focus is it going to affect us? And they said probably isn't. We probably going to have some rain bands come through, but the good thing is we've got a cool front, not a cold front, but a cool front coming through that's going to push the system more towards Florida and away from us. But it could affect the Saints game on Sunday because Saints play at 3:25. Don't be like one of my wife's sorority sisters. She calls us up in a panic at 4:30 last Sunday. She's like, I can't find the Saints game. I know it's on. You guys would know what channel it's on. I can't find it anywhere. And we're like, no, Deborah, it's next weekend, the 12th. Today is the 12th. No, it's not the 12th. it's the 5th or whatever date it was. I don't even know what date it is anymore. My thing says the 7th, so yeah, it was the 5th.
I never know what the date is anymore. I go days of the week according to if there's a football game or not, and which podcast I'm on, whether it's Under the Dome, Jordy Haltberg, my own once Kyle and I get that rolling, or a couple that I'm going to do this weekend. My life is literally Saints oriented.
Yeah, I kind of this time of the year, it's just saying who they're playing this week. That's how I know what week it is. And they're playing the Packers this week. I'm invited to go on back when we first started this show, way back when, Cat Chronicles, the Carolina Panthers podcast was a sponsor of the show. That's one of the reasons why we're still listed as a C3 network. They invited me to be on the show to preview next week's game with Carolina. So I'm going to be on that show, Cat Chronicles, and they'll upload it. I'm recording it, pre-recording it, and they'll upload it, I think Wednesday or Thursday is when they'll put the show on, previewing that next week. So Donald's birthday is tomorrow.
Well, happy birthday, Don.
Happy early birthday, yes. And we're going to talk about the two moves that you just mentioned. So the first big news this week, we were all worried because last week we talked about the three corners they had, and one of them's a rookie. They added a corner yesterday. News was made official today. Desmond Trufant. Tell me a little bit about Trufant, other than the fact that he was a Falcon. I don't know a whole heck of a lot about him.
Well, and that's the bulk of his career success did come in 7 years with Atlanta. He was a first-round draft choice by the Falcons in 2013 out of the University of Washington, who has put out some nice defensive backs in the NFL. Trufant has struggled with injuries. He joined the Detroit Lions as a free agent last year, appeared in only 6 games, and was nicked up even the year before that. I think appeared in 9 games with the Falcons. For the previous 2 years, Trufant has missed what that count up to 17 games because of injuries. So he's going to have to stay healthy. The Chicago Bears signed him as a free agent this offseason. Now, to be fair, the Bears have a lot of good young defensive backs, but Trufant just didn't make the cut. And I know a lot of people were trying to mansplain it away and say that it was because of salary. No, I mean, Trufant didn't sign for the veteran minimum, but it wasn't much higher than that. He just didn't make the team. He had some family issues early in training camp, missed a bunch of practices. And like I said, the Bears decided to go with the youth movement. If Trufant is healthy and his head is screwed on straight, he has good physicality. He's 6 foot, about 192. Still has the athleticism to stay with most NFL wide receivers down the field. And he's a good physical man coverage guy, which of course fits Dennis Allen's scheme and what he wants to do with his secondary, particularly cornerbacks. So that's what we're looking at. Folks, he's not going to be starting week 1. Most likely going to go to Ken Crawley if he's healthy. But Trufant, I'd expect him to play a handful of snaps if he's physically ready to go. So that's where we stand with Desmond Trufant.
Yeah, I kind of thought that Trufant was brought in more as depth. Especially they're not sure about Ken Crawley's status. I would not be surprised to see on Sunday Paulson Adebo actually gets the start. But, and we'll talk about this, the Packers have 4 wide receivers that could do a lot of damage. You're going to need all hands on deck. So they're going to need to bring in an extra corner, an outside corner, because Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who is our primary nickelback, and P.J. Williams, those are better inside guys. You need to have that outside guy, especially if they start targeting Adebo early and often, which I expect them to. I try and figure out how to get, because I would, Devontae Adams one-on-one with Adebo, because you would assume you're going to win that matchup. You're not going to want to put Adams one-on-one with Marshawn Lattimore. Calvin. Calvin says Dang, you're making me feel old. Donald says he'll be 25. Yeah, you're my son's age. So I'm just letting you know I am old.
I celebrated the 20th anniversary of my 29th birthday last month, and I'll just leave it at that.
There you go. There you go. I'm not quite double that age. I'm a little bit more than double that age. I remember 25 very well. I don't know. Anna's asking if Lattimore's in the clear. No suspension has been announced.
Right.
We talked a little bit about this last week. I don't even know if they're going to press the charges now. There's not been official charges really put out there for Lattimore, and the last I heard was that they were thinking about dropping the charges in this situation. So, I mean, have you heard anything different, Bob?
No, that's pretty much it. Which it would surprise me, because anybody that saw the TMZ video or read into the story of what happened, with Marshawn Lattimore, first of all, the kid made a boneheaded mistake. You get pulled over, you have a loaded handgun that's not even yours in your lap, and you're high as a kite. Everything is right there on camera. You have police body cams and all that stuff. But like you said, they never officially charged him, not yet anyway. And I don't know why. The case from an outsider's view, it seems pretty cut and dry. But the NFL can't even Goodell, as corrupt as he is, can't even suspend a guy for something that technically hasn't happened. In the official eyes of law enforcement. Now, what we have seen in the past, I think it was 2018, PJ Williams was suspended for 2 games for a DUI arrest that happened in July, but his suspension didn't take place until October. So, Anna, I think it was you that asked the question. The only thing that we know is that that Marshawn Lattimore is in the clear for this week and probably next week, because the league typically gives a team 2 weeks advance notice, unless something happens on the field or it's a spot drug test. The league will typically give a team 2 weeks advance notice of any pending suspensions. So you're right. That's where we sit with the Marshawn Lattimore situation. And no news is good news.
And then I think the same is true for Deontay Harris. We have not heard anything on him either. And I would think that this past weekend we would have heard something. There would have been some sort of news on him, and there hasn't been. Nick Underhill has kind of suggested that they may, if they do a suspension for either or both of those players, it'll probably be later on in the season when probably when Onyemata's suspension ends. And not saying that Goodell is, being benevolent in any which way, but
I will.
I really think that he's aware of the optics of what, you got a community that just got hit by a hurricane.
Yeah.
They already got one guy suspended. You got another star that's injured. You take out 2 more of their players, you're not going to get a whole heck of a lot of support. I just really feel that, you're not. They're going to do anything. They would have probably announced it by now, and I think they're just going to I think they're going to let Lattimore slide. I think they're going to wait on Deontay Harris and make a decision on him later. Probably around playoff time, they'll suspend him. That'll be about right. When they play the Bucs, that's when the suspensions will come down. Okay, so Donald, I'm going to bring up your thing in a minute, but I want to talk about Latavius Murray. That was the other big news that dropped today. I honestly expected him not even to make the final 53 based on his play in the preseason. And I got some pushback and some comments on there saying, well, no, he looked good in practice this week. I just feel like he kind of hit that wall of old all of a sudden. And I think the only reason why they didn't let him go earlier is because they were trying to find another running back, possibly to be the inside runner, because I don't think Tony Jones is really your inside runner guy. I think he's more that outside guy. He was competing with Devontae Freeman for that job. But how do you explain this move? Why make this move other than to bring in create roster space for some other players? How would you explain this move to release Murray now?
Well, it not only creates a space for some of the roster moves that they've made, because they also signed a couple of defensive tackles over the weekend. New Orleans did, but it does open up more salary cap space too, in case they need it. I don't plan on any big splash moves from the Saints, but it does create salary cap space. Because of that, I actually thought Latavius Murray would be one of the salary cap releases early in the offseason. When he made it past that wave, I began to think that he might be safe. And then, like you pointed out, Alan, he just did not. And forget playing poorly. Forget playing poorly in the 2 preseason games for a second. He just had a lousy training camp altogether. He didn't run well. He wasn't hitting the holes well. He put the ball on the ground, fumbling a couple times in training camp scrimmages. He just wasn't the Latavius Murray we were used to seeing. And like you said, once Tony Jones started to establish himself a little bit, that gave Sean Payton the confidence to, and Sean talked about it even prior to the Jacksonville preseason game, that Tony Jones was basically his number 2 back behind Kamara. And we've seen Sean Payton be comfortable with making those moves before, taking an undrafted guy well over an established veteran. And the moves have almost always paid off. Now the story today was that the Saints approached Latavius Murray, 4 days before the season opener, and asked him to take a pay cut. Latavius refused, and the Saints thereby granted him his release. I do find it a little bit unusual that a team would approach an established veteran like that, like Murray, to take a pay cut at this stage. But again, they could also be trying to free up some space, to give Marshawn Lattimore a contract extension too. Keep that in mind. But the Saints definitely feel comfortable with what they have at running back with Kamara and Tony Jones. Dwayne Washington, he's not much of an offensive threat, but he at least knows the system. And if push comes to shove, you could even move Ty Montgomery back to running back from wide receiver. And like you said, the Saints, they're more of a zone blocking scheme up front, which it's not a finesse scheme. It's definitely a power run blocking scheme, but you don't need an Earl Campbell or a Larry Zonka between the tackles. Not that Murray was that, but you can afford to have a guy, a little bit smaller guy, as long as he has good vision, like Kamara or Tony Jones does, and they're going to succeed with that run blocking system that they have up front.
All right, so I'm going to ask the question that I'm sure Twitter is going to burn up anytime now. We saw Le'Veon Bell sign with the Ravens because they lost yet another running back. What are the odds that the Saints bring in a Todd Gurley with his arthritic knees?
Todd Gurley, in my opinion, doesn't have much left in the tank.
Yeah.
They would bring in a guy like Gurley. Well, first of all, if someone like Latavius Murray is still unsigned, if an Alvin Kamara or Tony Jones were to go down for a long-term injury, that'd be the only way you'd see them look to bring in a guy like Gurley, or go back to Latavius Murray if he's still on the market by that time. Mm-hmm. Gurley might have enough left in the tank to give you a few games. He's not the guy you need to play, even as a reserve running back. He's not the guy that you can depend on, to pick you up important yardage during a game for a season-long stretch. He just doesn't have too much mileage on his knees and the rest of his body to be effective at all.
That's how I felt. I felt like 2018 was his peak. and then you only have so many carries in it as a back. And once you hit that magic number, I mean, you look at guys like Larry Johnson. You look at, going back to the Falcons. God, I just drew a blank on his name. Dirty Bird man.
Jamal Anderson.
Jamal Anderson. After so many carries, your body starts breaking down, and that's what's happened to these guys. That's one of the reasons why you see so many running back by committee approaches. I know people want to go back to the days of a Larry Zonka or Earl Campbell, where you have one guy doing all the carries, but it just doesn't happen that way anymore because you have so many snaps now, so many more snaps in a ball game than you had in the 70s, and the season's even longer now. Now it's 17 games. That's a lot. It's easy to get, and I think Deuce McCallum was talking about this. The count is around 320 to 330. Once you get above that number, you're wearing it back down. You're breaking this back's, body down. Yep. And I think Larry Johnson and Jamal Anderson both had over 400 one year, and that's great as a fantasy owner.
Sure.
20 TDs, 400 something carries, over 1,000 yards. You're loving it. But as a football team, that ends these guys really quick. So I just had to throw that out there because I know that's a question people are going to have, because they're going to look through all the free agent running backs who are still in the market, and they'll be drawn to the big name, Todd Gurley. He's a big power back. We only need him to touch the ball 5 or 10 times a ball game. Well, if he's only averaging, less than 2 yards a carry, are you really getting anything out of him? And then Calvin is bringing up receivers. We brought back Chris Hogan, which I'm not surprised. I expected Chris Hogan to come back, and that's probably an indication that your favorite receiver, Traquan Smith, probably isn't healthy enough to go this week. So they need another receiver, a slot receiver. Yeah, shock. This is my shock face. They probably need a healthy receiver. And I said from the outset, expect Chris Hogan to be the new Austin Carr, the guy who bounces back and forth in the practice squad to the active roster, depending on who's healthy. And even if he's active on game day, may get 1 or 2 balls thrown to him all game. And you're like, well, why do we even have him on the roster? This is why they cut him. They don't have to pay his full salary.
Yep.
They pay him per game that he's active. So how do you feel about the receiving core in the Chris Hogan signing?
Yeah, I'm terrified. Listen, I'm a big fan of Marquez Callaway. I have been since last year. I was one of the first on the Callaway bandwagon. But to rely on an undrafted second-year guy to be your bell cow at wideout until Michael Thomas comes back, that's a dangerous roll of the dice. And I think he's capable. But remember, too, the Green Bay Packers have a young man by the name of Jair Alexander. That's one of the top cornerbacks in the country. We're not talking college football. In the NFL, I'd still take Marshawn over him, but Alexander is a fine cover man. Don't think for one second that the Packers aren't scheming their darndest to try to match Alexander up on Callaway, but knowing that he's the Saints' number 1 wide receiver, unquestioned number 1 wide receiver right now. Deontay, I love Deontay Harris as a player. I think he's going to make a lot of plays this year if he stays healthy. But again, do you want a 5'6", 170-pound kick returner? Because you need him as a kick returner just as much, if not more. Do you want him playing 40 snaps a game at wide receiver? I don't. But what are your alternatives? Quan Smith? He's already proven that he can't be relied on. At least a guy like Chris Hogan, who you compared him to Austin Carr. I'd say he's certainly higher quality than that, But even in his prime, Chris Hogan didn't see a lot of a big amount of targets with the New England Patriots. If you can get a guy like Chris Hogan or Kevin White, who's still on the practice squad, if they become reliable veterans for a guy like Jameis Winston, who's still learning the offense, mind you, then you could see either Hogan and or White get some quality snaps. And don't discount Ty Montgomery, getting more snaps at wide receiver than Deontay Harris because of the size factor that I mentioned before. It's going to be a shotgun approach, a scatter shot to the wall, and see what sticks. I feel pretty sure that Callaway will do just fine, but at least one other guy has to step up, and no guy has distinguished himself away from the others at this point in time.
No, it's terrifying because you're looking at, like you said, they're gonna double Marquez Callaway, and I think they're gonna put a lot of pressure on the Saints offensive line. They're gonna go after Jameis Winston.
Sure.
To disrupt this timing. So all these people are talking about, oh yeah, here the deep ball's back. The deep ball's back. Deep ball takes some time to set up, and Jameis has the reputation of turning the ball over, especially if he gets a lot of pressure in his face. I think they are going to target going after Jameis, going after that offensive line, doing as much damage as they can. And then, if Jameis can beat him with the deep ball, so be it. But they like their matchup, their corners one-on-one against the Saints against the Saints receivers.
Wouldn't you? I mean, I'd blitz Jameis Winston coming off the bus. And I will, I'd bracket Kamara coming out of the backfield. I'd put a guy over I'd put Alexander on Marquez Callaway, put a safety over the top, and I'd one-on-one coverage everybody else until they prove they can beat me on more than just an occasional isolated play. Yeah,
exactly. No, I mean, that was where I was going to go with this. How do you feel about the Packers defense matched up with the Saints offense?
That's a tough matchup. I mean, first and foremost, let's go back to what Alvin Kamara did to these same Green Bay Packers last September. Kamara put up 197 all-purpose yards, had a couple long runs, but his primary damage was done as a receiver. He caught 13 balls for about 140 and scored twice. The Packers know this. In fact, that's one of the reasons why they brought in former Falcons linebacker DeAndre Campbell, because Campbell had so much success against Kamara, with the Falcons, as much success as any linebacker in the league has had. Yeah. So, the Packers are going to attempt to bracket Kamara, shadow him coming out of the backfield, and probably put a safety on him if he lines up in the slot. Because if you control Alvin Kamara, then all of a sudden you crank up the pressure on Jameis Winston, emotionally, mentally, to make a play with an unproven wide receiver core. So, that's what the key to the game is. If the Saints can free Kamara up in space, if Callaway can win his matchups, and if one of those things don't happen, then can another guy step up, even if it's an Adam Troutman or Juwan Johnson at tight end? If nobody steps up, then that's a huge matchup advantage for the Packers all day long.
And that was my worry, and why this Latavius Murray release is actually kind of bad timing.
Yeah,
because I felt like if the Saints were going to handle the Packers, they needed to be able to run the football and run the football effectively against the Packers. And part of that was going to be being able to pound inside against the Packers front four, or front seven, actually, and keep the pressure off of Jameis Winston. Let him run play action pass to get his receivers open and to get the blitz away from him. And I don't know if just running Alvin Kamara is going to be enough.
No, again, because they need him just as much, if not more, for this game as a receiver, be it out of the backfield or lined up out of the slot. Fantasy owners, if you have Kamara and you took a late round draft choice on Tony Jones, it might not be a bad idea to play both of them, because for the same reasons why they would have used Latavius Murray in a game like this, why they did use Latavius Murray in this same matchup last year. This is where Tony Jones could become extremely vital, to the Saints' success. He doesn't have to run. I mean, neither Kamara or Jones have to run for 100 yards necessarily, but establish that threat. Establish the fact that you can have a balanced offense, and it's going to it's going to make the Packers think twice about putting eight men in the box or blitzing Winston from all angles, because now all of a sudden those play action fakes become a lot more effective.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's going to be a tough matchup because you've got a lot of things on your plate as an offensive play caller, and I'm talking about Sean Payton. What you have to do to protect Jameis and defend against Packers defense that's going to be coming after him that knows what Jameis likes to do.
Yeah,
he does get impatient, and he does take the deep shots, even when they're not there, especially if he feels like the offense isn't moving. So it's going to be a case of Jameis is going to have to become patient, something he does not show very much as a Buck, but he has to be patient and let the game play out. Live for another down. Even if we fall behind by 14 points or more, you have to live for another down because you don't know when the plays are going to break open, and you can't force them. How do you feel,
exactly.
How do you feel about the Saints' defense against the Packers' offense?
There's some matchup problems there, but at the same time, when I was in, through the remainder of the week, through Saints News Network and NSI.com, sorry, self-plug, you usually do it for me. I'm starting to break down the match. Well, I've already broken down the matchups. I'll do so in article format. I actually like the way the Saints defense matches up against Green Bay. Now, of course, you have the almighty Aaron Rodgers.
Hey, that might be the same quarterback next year. Don't tell Sean.
Right. I think the key to the game for the Saints defense is stopping the running game and Aaron Jones. Mm-hmm. Green Bay's current coaching staff, they want to establish the run first. This is what's one of the things that's caused Rodgers such difficulty with the Packers coaching staff. Management is a different storyline. Aaron Rodgers wants to play hero ball, and for most of his career, Mike McCarthy mainly as the Packers coach let him do that, and he had a certain degree of success. Matt LaFleur, when he came in and got hired as the Packers coach, he wanted to establish balance, and he's done so with great success with not only Aaron Jones, but they have a deep running back room now. The Saints need to stop the run, and if they do so, the Packers all-pro left tackle is out for this game. They're starting two other rookies along the offensive line. You tell me you don't like that matchup between the Saints pass rush and an inexperienced offensive line, not only as individual players, but as a cohesive unit. If you could stop the run, you can tee off on Rodgers and at least rush him into decisions. I realize he's not going to throw a lot of interceptions, but all you need is one game-changing strip sack or one game-changing fumble, and all of a sudden that could flip the momentum and the score in your team's favor.
Absolutely.
If the Packers are able to establish the running game, on the other hand, you mentioned the four receivers that Green Bay has. Everybody knows about Adams. He's an all-pro, et cetera, et cetera. The Saints are going to try to lock Lattimore on him whenever possible, and whenever they could do that, I like that matchup. It's the other three guys. Lazard. I can never pronounce the other guy's name, so bear with me 1 second. Lazard, Vandy Scantling, and of course Randall Cobb, who is extremely familiar with Aaron Rodgers. Right. It's where those guys could beat your secondary if your pass rush is stymied either by a play action fake or good superior blocking up front. So if you can't get to Rodgers, he's going to pick you apart. Not only this secondary, I mean, we've seen him do it to good secondaries let alone a questionable one. So Ken Crawley, Desmond Trufant, if he plays, and certainly Paulson Adebo, like you said at the onset of the show, they're the ones that are going to be targeted. Doesn't matter whether it's Adams, Cobb, Lazard, all of them are proven playmakers. So that's where this game is going to be won and lost. That, and whether the Saints could stop the run and make Green Bay one-dimensional.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that, because I think the key is them being able to run the football just like for us, because just like how they want to come off the bus blitzing Winston, we want to come off the bus blitzing Rodgers. It's not that Rodgers is going to make a mistake. It's you're trying to make Rodgers take the checkdowns and get impatient and start flinging the ball all over the field. And that helps your secondary too, because you disrupt the timing of that offense. You make them throw underneath. You have to, and this is where the linebackers come into play, you have to have linebackers who hit these guys as soon as they catch the ball and bring them down. They're not going to be guys that are going to make yards after the catch. They can't be allowed to do that, because if they do that, and that's what happened last time, if they do that, that's the problem you're going to have facing Aaron Rodgers, because they got a lot of yards after the catch. They got a lot of big plays against our defense because we couldn't get pressure on them.
Yeah, and I would say that Packers game last year was probably the worst game that the Saints played defensively. Probably a toss-up between that or the Chargers game. And like you said, it wasn't. They were getting to Rodgers. They were forcing him to get rid of the ball quickly. They did a solid job against Aaron Jones, but Aaron broke away for a couple long runs. So at least that established balance for the Packers. And the Saints had a heck of a time, or did a very poor job, rather, of tackling in the secondary. And that was the main difference in the football game between Green Bay and New Orleans last year.
And guys, I'm well aware that our pictures are freezing and you're getting the audio only. I've been trying to correct it the whole time. If you can see what I've been doing, I don't know why it's doing what it's doing. My internet signal is strong. It's got to be the children of the sugarcane fields out here. That's all I can say. But yeah, we've got frozen images. At least the audio is doing well. All right. So last thing, special teams. We don't have Thomas Morstead. It seems like Blake Gilkin is really booming these punts. Mm-hmm. One of the strengths of Thomas Morstead was his ability to flip the field and make you go the distance against the Saints defense. The other thing was our kicking game with Will Lutz. We had as close as you can get to Morton Anderson as you ever could get without reincarnating young Morton Anderson with good distant kicking. You figured once you got past midfield, you had a pretty good shot of getting at least 3. And then the last one's Deontay Harris is a kick returner. How do you feel our special teams match up against the Packers special teams?
A lot depends on, remember they lost, Justin Hardy and a couple players off the back end of that of their depth chart last year or from last year. Hardy and players like that are what made the kick coverage units one of the best in the league. And I think it was either kickoff or actually I think it was punt coverage unit that was tops in the NFL last year.
Yeah.
So can those guys, and there's still a lot of them remaining, Dwayne Washington, JT Gray are 2 that come to mind. But the other guys that they kept this year on, the back half of the depth chart at every position, are they going to be as athletic and as smart in their kick coverage? That's as big a key to any football game, and any coach will tell you special teams are undervalued as it is. But once you look past the obvious, the directional punting, the ability of the accuracy and distance of your field goal kicker and your kick return units, kick coverage is just as important. The Packers don't have. They did draft a rookie wide receiver, Amari Rodgers, who will probably be their kick returner. So it's extremely important that the Saints cover those kicks well. Deontay Harris is as explosive as any kick returner in the league. In fact, I will take him over any kick returner in the league. And I know he's going to be your punt returner. I don't know. I've been hearing some different things that they might use Ty Montgomery or Tony Jones as a kickoff returner, to save a little bit of wear and tear on Deontay. So, stay tuned there. And like you said, Gillikin, I think, is going to do a fine job. His first real test by fire will tell us for sure. But I have some nice confidence in him. But is Aldrick Rosas, if they indeed promote him from the practice squad or any other kicker that they bring in, he's not going to be Will Lutz. So in big field goal opportunities, how confident is Sean Payton going to be to pull that trigger on a 50-something yard field goal as opposed to going for it on 4th and 4? That kind of thing. It's going to be a roll of the dice, and that's going to tell us a lot about how Sean Payton feels about his kicker. And if the kicker does get his chance, is he going to convert it, or are we going to have another revolving door for the next 3 to 4 weeks while Lutz is out?
Monday morning tryouts over at Saints training camp after a bad kicking game. Yep. No, I totally agree with you on that. And then we got to talk about the X factor. Taysom lost the quarterback battle, and Sean has now made it clear. And this is what I had said a few weeks ago when we were talking about this, that if Taysom goes back to the Swiss Army knife role, that we're going to have 4 quarterbacks on the roster, because there's no way Sean is going to trust Ian Book to come in if Jameis Winston gets injured. You need a veteran who can take the mental reps, who knows the verbiage, to come in. And sure enough, they brought back Trevor Siemian, to be the 4th quarterback. So you'll probably see Ian Book inactive most games. And the reason why you have to do that is because Taysom is going to be involved in the tight ends and receiver meeting rooms, learning the offensive system based on that. He won't be able to come in case of injury and play quarterback because he won't know that game plan.
Yep.
So how do you see Taysom being used in this game? I see him being used a lot. First of all, like you said, you've called it for the last 3 or 4 weeks. I fully agreed with you that I thought the Saints were going to at some point carry 4 quarterbacks, because it's as simple as this. You can't just stash Ian Book on the practice squad, because that means you have to release him and he's subjected to waivers first. He'll never get back to you if you do that. He wouldn't. So they elected instead to release Siemian, knowing that they would probably be able to bring him back, which is exactly what happened. Now, make no mistake, if Jameis Winston goes down in this game or gets nicked up for a couple snaps, Siemian is the guy that they're going to be going to. But knock on wood, if Jameis goes down and it's a long-term injury or even a few games like we saw with Brees in 4 games last year, they're going to go back to Taysom Hill as quarterback. That's just what will happen. Absolutely. In the meantime, for this game, and as long as Jameis Winston stays healthy and be productive, Taysom. We talked about the running game and how valuable a guy like Latavius Murray would have been in this situation. And yes, we're going to see more Tony Jones than what we maybe thought what we were going to see in the first place. Taysom's going to be used on a lot of different wildcat type packages. Maybe not taking the snap from center, but he'll be in the backfield. And Alan, I know what you meant when you talk about Taysom Hill and tight ends, but a lot of other people, when they're talking about, you could just plug Taysom Hill at tight end. No, you can't, because he's not a traditional body type for a tight end. He's more of the H-back, or what the old days they used to call a move tight end, where you bring a guy in motion and you smack him into the line as a blocker that way.
He's not a guy like a Ben Watson that can fire off the line and take out the defensive end, either on the edge to seal the edge on a running play or stay in pass protection. No, Taysom Hill's a guy you want in motion as an H-back or even moved over into the slot. And that's what they're going to use. They're going to use him in all three of those spots. H-back, motion, out of the slot, from the backfield. Taysom's probably going to get 15 to 20 touches or opportunities to touch the ball in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And you want Taysom Hill matched up against a defensive back. You don't want him hitting on a linebacker because it's one thing when he's running and he hits a linebacker. It's quite another when he's got to throw a block on a linebacker. Yep. He just doesn't have that build. And you put him up against a defensive end, defensive end's going to run him over. It's just that's the reality of the game. He's, like you said, guy comes in motion, the safety's creeping up towards the box, so the cornerback's coming in for a dog blitz. Taysom's going to go there and cut him. That's just what his job is in that formation. He is not he's just not that. He's not a Josh Hill. He's not a Jeremy Shockey, a guy who goes around pushing around. Even Rob Gronkowski, he's not a guy who's going to go around pushing these guys around. It's just not who he does, not what he is. And that brings up another interesting point. Nick Vannett got put on recallable IR just like Michael Thomas did. Yeah. So we're looking at, we don't know Adam Trotman's status yet. You got Juwan Johnson, who is a pass-catching tight end, not an inline blocker. And then you've got Garrett Griffin, who I feel like is really an H-back too. Not really that guy you put in as a third tackle to go run over somebody. Is that how you see this?
Yeah, I do. And Garrett Griffin, again, being that H-back type, he's also a guy that you're going to see, you might see lined up at fullback. But again, in a situation like that, a fullback or an H-back, if they have to take on a linebacker or even a defensive end, they can they have the luxury of doing so at different strategic angles or even getting a running start, as opposed to just muscle on muscle, because neither Taysom Hill or Garrett Griffin are really that type of guy, those type of guys. James Hurst is a guy that they used a lot down the stretch last year, and I always call it jumbo packages or goal line packages. We would see James Hurst in the game as an extra offensive lineman or tight end because he would have to declare himself as an eligible receiver, even on 2nd and 5 plays at midfield. So Sean Payton certainly feels comfortable that way. Now to do so, again, and knock on wood, and I'm looking at you, Teron Armstead and Andrus Peat. Your starting 5 offensive linemen have to stay healthy for James Hurst to be brought in that role. But if they do, you're going to see Hurst probably get 12 to maybe 10 to 12 snaps in that capacity as well. Because like you said about Juwan Johnson, I think he's going to have a very good, solid year. He's not a down in, down out type guy, type of tight end. He's a matchup tight end that you want in space as much as, but heck of a blocker, but you still want him in space as much as possible. And we don't even know the health of Adam Troutman for that matter.
Exactly. Troutman, we're guessing he'll be healthy enough to play, but we don't know because no injury report. Injury report comes out, I guess, tomorrow.
Yes.
All right. So I got this thing to stop freezing. That's good. It required me walking around the room. But yeah, Anna said she's pissed off that we had to play the game in Jacksonville. Green Bay, of course, was talking about how they would be more than happy to host a game. And I remember that bullshit from 2005 where we had to play in Giants Stadium as a home game. Yeah, New York fans were really accommodating. All right, so Donald's been asking me this, and I'm sorry, since we were frozen, I couldn't pull up any of y'all's comments as they were coming up. And I also realized how fat I am, but that's beside the point. the signing of Montravius, is I'm saying this right, Montravius Adams?
Montravius.
Okay. How do you feel? We talked a little bit about this last week because it just happened. But, we only have 3 defensive tackles. And I was talking last week about how we were going to probably need to see Peyton Turner, again, another player who hasn't been healthy in a while, or Marcus Davenport probably have to kick inside on some downs because they have the ability to play defensive tackle. How do you feel about Adams, and what do you think he's going to, if any, contribute to this game this Sunday?
They not only signed Montravius Adams, who played with the Green Bay Packers his first 3 seasons in the NFL, but they also added a guy who I really love from the Minnesota Vikings, Jaleel Johnson. Jaleel is more of a run-stopping guy, but I love his game. They added him to the practice squad. It doesn't mean they won't call him up before Sunday, but Montravius, as right now, is on the active roster. At this point, just like with wide receiver, they're kind of throwing bodies at the defensive tackle position to see who really is going to emerge as a reliable inside presence, both against the run and at least a guy to push the pass pocket, even if he is not able to generate pressure as an individual pass rusher. So you're looking at probably Sunday's actives for defensive tackle are going to be Shy Tuttle, Malcolm Roach. They'll most likely be your starters, and Montravius Adams and or Christian Ringo will be active. I don't think both of them, because they're going to want all 5 of their edge guys active, provided Peyton Turner is healthy. If Peyton Turner is not healthy, then you'll see him activate that 4th defensive tackle. But, you mentioned Davenport or Turner. Tanoa Passanio was playing a lot of snaps inside, especially against Jacksonville, I noticed. And he was making some nice plays, too. He's just like David Onyemata. In fact, it's same exact body type as Onyemata. A bigger, athletic freak. Only goes about 285, but he has a really strong upper body. So as long as Passanio plays with decent leverage when he's moved inside, he'll be okay against the run. And that, guys, is what we need our tackles to do on Sunday afternoon, is just stalemate the running game and just get a little bit of interior push of the Green Bay pass pocket. Because if it does that, it forces those guards to pinch in and leaves the edge rushers, Cam Jordan, Davenport, Granderson. It gives them more one-on-one opportunities along the edge. Again, against the Green Bay tackle tandem that is going to be without Bakhtiari.
Yeah, and like we said from the get-go of the show, it's very important that the Saints make the Packers, believe it or not, one-dimensional, because you have to be able to take the run away from them, because that's what they want to do. And it's unbelievable I'm saying this, but you want to make Aaron Rodgers have to feel like he's got to beat you with his arm.
I said the same thing earlier, and I laughed because I said, I can't believe I'm saying this, but it'd be my game plan.
Yeah, and the reason why is because that if you can get a pass rush against that offensive line, you can affect Aaron Rodgers' timing, frustrate him, and he'll make not mistakes, but he'll make reckless throws out of bounds or short or away to get your defense off the field on 3rd down, because 3rd and 5 or less is deadly with Aaron Rodgers. He loves those downs. You get Aaron Rodgers 3rd and 7, 3rd and 10, 3rd or longer. Now your pass rush can really make a difference, and you can run that NASCAR package where you can get a Turner and a Granderson and Davenport and Cam Jordan all out on the field at the same time, and put the heat on Rodgers and beat up that offensive line. So I've always said that the Packers and the Saints are kind of mirror teams. I always felt that way because they have very similar offensive philosophies, especially now that they've gotten away from Mike McCarthy and they're more into LaFleur's kind of mentality where they want to establish the run first. Believe it or not, the Saints run the ball and want to establish the run a lot more now than they did, say, 2011, 2013, and so forth, because they like Alvin Kamara as a runner and as a pass receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be the focus of the Saints game plan. Limit Jameis's mistakes by getting the ball out of his hand quickly and scheming the system so the play action pass, which is his strength, benefits him. You don't want Jameis, because unlike Rodgers, if Jameis feels that pressure to make every down count, that's when his mistakes come in.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And the worst thing, last year's ball game, Green Bay won 37-30. That's the type of ball game the Saints need desperately to avoid this time. Because and again, we could talk until we're blue in the face about Jameis Winston's passing abilities. I don't think anybody should, nobody in their right mind should deny his passing talents. But he's not the guy that you want to get in a shootout, especially in his first official game in the Saints offensive system, because he doesn't know those 2-minute drills like Drew Brees. I mean, nobody is Drew Brees when it comes to the 2-minute warning. Very few people ever have been. But this game is going to be won offensively by the Saints from the sideline as far as the play calling and the scheming and Jameis's execution. If the Saints get into a shootout or the game turns into a potential shootout, the Saints are at a big disadvantage in game one.
Yeah, and it's not just Jameis. It's the thing we've been talking about all game. There's no Michael Thomas. There's no starting NFL experience starting tight end out there. There's no Ben Watson, Jimmy Graham, even a Josh Hill, a guy that you feel like you could go to, or Jamal Cook, where you feel like you can go to if you get in trouble. And Jameis likes to go to his tight ends. You're relying on Juwan Johnson, who this will be his first NFL game as a tight end. Yes, he's a receiver. Yes, he played a little last year, but this is different now as a tight end. So there's so many challenges for this receiving core that, you don't want to get into that shootout. When we had Drew Brees, we played a lot of shootout games. Keep in mind, you had Marcus Colston in your field. In the early years, you had, Lance Moore and Devery Henderson and I can't think of his name, number 7, Robert Meacham. You had guys who had experience in the system.
And experience with each other, too.
Yes. That they knew the system backwards and forwards. And defenses not only knew that, they knew that there were 4 and 5 eligible receivers, so you couldn't double up somebody.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have that fear this year. So, Peyton's going to want to try and protect people as best he can in this game. So it's frustrating. It's because this is a winnable game, and had it not happened and you had 70,000 fans in the dome, that helps your offense. Playing in Jacksonville, even if you get 60, 70,000 people in Jacksonville, that's an outdoor stadium.
Yeah.
The noise doesn't travel like it does in the dome. I've talked about this before too. The dome, the way it's constructed, the noise goes up into the rafters and then circles right back down in the field, and it's like a wind. It just circulates on the field, and you can't even tell where it's coming from. And just the sound is so large. It's overwhelming. They said they've never been in a stadium that's like that, and it's just the way the stadium with the metal, the way the stadium amplifies the sound. Seattle's like that too, even an outdoor stadium. They've designed that stadium in a way that the sound stays trapped and just circulates on the field.
They built that like the old bowl designs, Riverfront, Three Rivers, because Three Rivers got noisy as heck. And even the old Mile High Stadium, even though that had an open end, the closed end of the stadium. It came up, and it was literally called a bowl stadium. And we're both old men. Those bowl stadiums and Arrowhead still exists too, and that's why Arrowhead is renowned for its noise as well.
Yeah. So I mean, and then a lot of stadiums, unlike those stadiums that have grass fields, the Saints still have an artificial turf. They have a concrete floor. So then again, the sound's bouncing up off the concrete too. I mean, anybody that's had 10-foot ceilings in their house and have hardwood floors or tiled floors or whatever, how loud that gets in your house. So yeah, I mean, that's the disadvantage. We lost a home field advantage game. Yeah. And the good news is the power is slowly coming back throughout the city. Orleans Parish schools, my wife just texted me this, in fact. Orleans Parish is talking about reopening their schools next week.
Good.
So it looks like the city should be back to be able to host the next Saints home game. This would be the only one that's going to be on the road. This is not going to be a Katrina type of season. And I
wrote about this past week, and I realized that there wasn't quite the devastation in the city of New Orleans itself as what had happened with Katrina. And this is where the Saints are fortunate as an organization, is that only 2 of their first 7 weeks are at home. They have 4 other away games and a bye week. So that does give the area a chance to recover. Because their next home game is not going to, believe it or not, is not going to be until October 3rd against, ironically enough, if you think back to that 2005 season, the New York Giants.
Yeah. Yes. It's always frustrating. It's like 2001, right after 9/11, the first game that's back, we go to New York to play the Giants. All places to go play. 2005 after Katrina, we had that great win on the road against Carolina, our first home game, New York against the Giants. So here we go again. We're going to play the Giants next time, this time in our stadium. And I honestly don't fear this Giants team. As long as I got Daniel Jones at quarterback, I'm not worried about this Giants team.
I feel okay. Yeah. Speaking of Alan, I know we're wrapping up soon. I'd like to get your predictions first on, and I don't care what order you want to go in, season record and how they finish, and predictions for this Packers game.
I don't have my schedule in front of me, so I can't really go game by game. But here's the key to this season. Every year that the Saints have won a division, 2017 through 2020, they would hit a winning streak where they would go through October, November undefeated, basically. Even in 2017, it started 0-2. Then I think went on a 9-game winning streak. And that has been what has carried this team to 4 consecutive division titles, to winning 11 to 13 games over those 4 years, each of those 4 years. I don't know if this team has a long winning streak in it. I feel like this is going to be a team that's going to be battling 500 for a little while, because it's going to be win a couple, lose a couple, win, lose, win. It's about midway through the season when people start coming back. And this is barring any injuries, any significant injuries. I think Michael Thomas coming back, that's key. David Onyemata coming back is huge. And how fast Adebo grows up. If those 3 things happen and we have no significant injuries, like an Alvin Kamara injury, knock on wood, offensive line injuries, or any big defensive front 7 injuries, and I'm talking about Demario Davis, Cam Jordan, even Quan Alexander, you don't have anything like that, I think this team has the potential to go 10-7, 11-6. If they get significant injuries or they lose guys for several games because of injuries, then this team is looking at just flip it, 6-11, 7-10, 8-9 kind of season. They've got a core that's talented. And you have to keep Jameis protected until Jameis gets comfortable enough in the offense that he knows the offense enough and you can trust his decision-making enough that he's not going to feel the pressure to carry the team. As long as he doesn't have that in place within the system, he should be fine. So I'm going to go 11-6 right now because I'm going to make it optimistic. I've been pessimistic too much this offseason. I'm going to be optimistic. Do 11-6. I'm not putting Jameis in the Pro Bowl, but I will put Alvin Kamara in the Pro Bowl. And I will put I'm going to say you'll probably get at least a Willie Snead kind of season out of Marquez Callaway. If not 1,000-yard season. 17 games, it's not that hard for him to hit 1,000 yards.
Right.
He only has to average 50 to 60 yards per game to get that, if my math is right. I'm a humanities major. I don't do math. Sean Calvin makes a good point. Saints own October, and that's where they make their runs. Unfortunately, though, they're not very good in January. And I would like to struggle this year in October and have a good run in January. As far as this Sunday, we've talked about it before too. The Saints don't do well starting out of the blocks. They haven't recently under Sean Payton. Sean's going to hate me for this. I just feel like Aaron Rodgers is going to have too big of a game, and I think the Packers are going to put a lot of heat on Jameis Winston and force him to make some mistakes, and they're going to put the clamps on Kamara and dare the Saints receivers to beat that secondary. And fans are going to be pissed off because we had a bad weekend in football. I'm not an LSU fan, but
yeah, you did.
The Twitter people LSU fans on Twitter were just losing their minds over that UCLA game, especially after Auburn just totally stole the lunch money, beat them up, and shoved them in the locker with their pants and underwear up around their ears. Yep. The Miami Hurricanes, earlier that day, and poor Tulane. They got robbed. I'm sorry. They got robbed with a horrible pass interference call. So this is not going to be another good weekend for New Orleans football. I'm not going to talk about my Cajuns. They got to tackle. That's all I can say. They got to tackle. But, I just feel like this is a game that they're going to lose just because they're a little on demand right now. So I'm going to give the Packers by 10. I think the Saints put a good scare in them, but I'm going to say 31-21 kind of game. I know people are going to be pissed off at me for that, but that's just how I feel right now, especially not being in the dome. I'm sorry. I took up all that time. Go ahead, Bob. Your turn.
Oh, no, that's okay. I'll start with my season first. First of all, I'd like to throw out there just for everybody. I'm not going to make a season prediction article like I have in the past because I have no idea who's going to come out of the NFC. And if I picked the New Orleans Saints, I think I would feel like a homer. But out of the AFC, I do have the Cleveland Browns going to the Super Bowl. They're my Super Bowl team, believe it or not. Yes. Yes.
I didn't even throw Super Bowl teams out there. To me, you got to beat the man. I still got to pull for the Chiefs. I can't. The Chiefs are way too talented. Unless they have a bunch of injuries, I still got to pull for the Chiefs as the AFC rep. Okay. Who's your NFC rep?
NFC rep, I don't know.
I can tell you who it's not going to be. It's not going to be any of the other teams in the NFC South other than Tampa. You're not going to see the Falcons or the Panthers. In fact, I think the Panthers will be on the clock after week 6. I think they're going to be the #1 overall pick. And I'm not a big believer in the Rams. I saw Peter King pick the Rams to be the Rams and the Bills. He picked as the Super Bowl contenders. I'm I'm not a big believer in the Rams. I think Sean McVay is way overrated as a play coach.
So do I. They're beat up at running back. I love their wide receivers, but they have questions along the offensive line. And I love Matt Stafford, but at this point in his career, you got to believe he's shell shocked after so many beatings in Detroit.
I think so too. I mean, I think there are going to be games where you're going to think the Rams are back, but there are going to be other games where it's like, what the hell is going on with this team? And I think especially because they can't run the football. I don't really have a good feeling. I hate to say it's going to be Tampa because it pains me to say it. Somebody's got to knock them off. I think the Saints have the ability, but I don't have confidence in the Saints being able to move deep in January. I just don't. Not right now. I think they're about a draft away from being able to move deeper in January, and I think that draft has to be receivers.
Yeah, finally. But that's the thing with this team, this New Orleans Saints team. I think they're going to have early season struggles between being displaced, being without Onyemata, Michael Thomas, and Will Lutz. People aren't talking enough about that. Along with so many new players, your Callaways, your Juwan Johnsons, your Zach Bonds, who's looked outstanding. But his first regular season game, at linebacker, there's going to be a lot of bumps early on. I think this is a 500 football team early in the year. I mean, I know Sean Payton's history of going undefeated in October and nearly undefeated in November. But outside October 3rd Giants, October 10th at Washington, those are both winnable games. But then you come back from your bye and you're at Seattle. And you won't have Thomas or Onyemata back. Then you got Tampa Bay and Goodell. Yeah, I said it. At home. And then you go into November with Atlanta. And like them or not, I think Atlanta is a bad football team, but is still a rival. And then you go on the road to Tennessee and at Philadelphia before you round up November at home against Buffalo. This is going to be a much, much better team. Again, barring injury, like you said, it's going to be a much, much better team at the end of the year than it is the beginning.
Yeah.
And therefore, I think that they could put a Super Bowl run together, a la what Tampa did from the 7th seed last year. If they position themselves right, and if the matchups fall a certain way, which obviously at this point in the off season still is way too early to tell.
Yeah.
Before Onyemata's suspension, Thomas's injury, and Hurricane Ida, I had this as a 13-win team neck and neck with the Buccaneers for the South title. Now I'm thinking 10-7, 11-6 because of the early bumps in the road that I expect them to face. I'm with you though. I'll go optimistic and say 11-6, and wild card. And again, once you're in the dance, you got a shot. Yeah, but I'm not going to step out on that limb and make them my NFC Super Bowl pick. I think pick a name out of the hat for the NFC. Saints have as good a chance as any, but the Buccaneers have got to be the on paper favorite. But I think the Saints will be in the playoffs again, and I could see a run out of them.
Yeah, I mean, Seattle is a possibility.
Sure.
Who knows with Arizona? The NFC West is just that tough division. Who knows how San Francisco bounces back this year? When does Garoppolo get hurt and Trey Lance take over? I
like to win and not if.
Yeah, it's a win. I think the NFC East is garbage. It's still going to be a dumpster fire that a 9-18 probably wins that division. The NFC North, it's really the Packers with the Vikings being the brother who gets hurdled every year. I mean, it's just that's the reality. I have no confidence in the Bears. I have no confidence in the Lions. So then it becomes Tampa and the Saints. Those are the two teams. Atlanta's probably a year away from competing for a playoff spot. I think Kyle Pitts has a good impact on him if he stays healthy. But I think Atlanta's defense is still suspect. They're the team that's going to be in shootouts, and they're the team that has a quarterback who is a pinata, back there when they get into the shootouts. Because Matt Ryan looks old and slow, and he has no confidence in his offensive line at all. And that's just a reality. So, yeah, I'm the same way when it comes to that. You got to throw some names in a hat and see who gets hot in December, because that seems to be the key to representing the NFC in the Super Bowl. Is you have to get hot in December and January, because that's the ones that go on. If you don't get hot in those months, if you get hot early in the season, they're the ones, and that's what's happened to the Saints. They're the ones that kind of flame out at the end.
A little bit.
So how do you see the Packers game playing out?
I tell you, early on, I had the Packers as a probable loss, even though it was going to be in the Dome. I was back and forth on it. But this Saints team, and I realize they're undermanned coming into it. I understand that. And I almost feel like it's a homer pick. But at the same time, I feel like that this is a group, the New Orleans Saints, with a chip on its shoulder right now. They're angry. These players and coaches read the headlines. Don't let them fool you. They're angry at being at what they feel is disrespected. Like we said when we broke down the matchups tonight, and as I will in my articles through the remainder of the week, I like the Saints' defense's chances as long as they can stop the run. If they can stop the run, they can rush Rodgers into not necessarily mistakes, but at least rush decisions, giving the defense opportunities, and most importantly, keeping them out of a shootout. And as long as they stay out of a shootout, I think the Saints have enough balance on offense to move the ball. And as long as ball security and rhythm offensively are the two main stories. It's going to be a desperate chess game between Sean Payton and Joe Barry, the Packers defensive coordinator. The major chess piece is going to be Alvin Kamara. And you watch half the Packers defense at times follow him, especially when he comes out of the backfield. Callaway's got to make plays, because I don't necessarily have confidence in any of the other playmakers, but I think Jameis Winston is going to play solid football. And as long as they avoid a shootout, I picked it. On Jordy Hultberg's show earlier, I picked the Saints to win in a 27-24 upset. I don't feel great about it, but I do. I give the Saints a puncher's chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other things we talked about, the hidden yardage. You're not going to get the turnovers, but if you can get the special teams yardage, you get Deontay Harris getting the Saints offense in great special teams positioning. And if you can get the punter to flip the field and make Aaron Rodgers go the length of the field against the Saints to score touchdowns, I think that's a key too.
Yes.
And like you mentioned, no Will Lutz, that's a challenge, because you're now rolling the dice every time the kicker comes out there just for an extra point, and that's going to make a difference. There's a lot of what ifs, and I think it's going to be an entertaining game. I think Saints fans are going to be both ecstatic and frustrated.
Yep.
I only picked against the Saints just because I feel like they're undermanned receiver-wise right now. I think the receivers will get better, but I think Harris has to have a big game and get that coverage, and so does Kamara, and get Absolutely. That coverage away from Callaway and make Callaway have him beat his guy one-on-one, and just move the chains. That's all you got to do.
Yep.
Move the chains, and control the clock. And that's how you win this ball game. So, all right. So we kind of touched on a lot of things. Bob, is there any other things that you're working on that's going to come out this week that we should be paying attention to?
Hey, Alan, just game coverage. Tomorrow's piece is going to be what everybody is talking about the most: how the Saints pass offense matches up against the Packers pass defense. Mm-hmm. Then I'm going to cover the rest of the matchups, in a similar way. Run offense versus rush defense, and then do the same thing on the other side of the ball. Given some time on Sunday morning, I'll probably release a series history and prediction article. That's up in the air right now. Coming off a holiday, you sort of lose a day when it comes to game coverage, and we're still in a feeling out process. But I know I'm going to be doing at least 4 preview pieces for the game between now and Sunday.
Yeah, I forgot to look it up earlier. I think the Saints still have a losing record against the Packers in the series history. Sean Payton's won a few games against them. The last time they opened with the Packers was in 2011, if my memory serves. And that was when it came down to the final seconds, the final possession, and Mark Ingram was stopped just inches short of the goal line, forcing an overtime. But Darren Sproles had a big game. I think he even returned a punt for a touchdown in that game. So that, and we didn't know at the time, but that started out probably the most prolific offense in it was the most prolific offense in Saints history. So, even a loss. Yeah. Well, Colston broke his collarbone, I think, on that play too, when he fumbled. But yeah,
we did. Yes.
And he came back like 3 weeks later. It was unbelievable that he came back, but we didn't know at the time, but that was going to be the most prolific offense in Saints history. Maybe history repeats itself. That was in Green Bay. We'll see how this plays out. But in the meantime, thank all you guys for joining us. I'm sorry you had to look at my god-awful face, frozen. And I was trying to fix it, and I have a feeling I have a dead spot in that corner where I was sitting. That's why I kept freezing, because I was pulling up some statistics while we were talking, as I normally do, and it didn't happen. So anyway, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next time on Under the Dome. Good night, everybody.